Hi again everyone, thanks for joining me for another Allan Holdsworth lesson video. First of all, I want to do this video pretty much as a thank you for everybody that watched my previous massive 5.5 hour diatribe on Allan's soloing patterns and stuff like that. A lot of the comments are really nice and very kind, so I really appreciate that. So I wanted to do this video as a thank you for a couple of other reasons, but yeah, so I want to go over Spokes today. And Spokes, as well as another Allan tune called Sundays, were the two tunes that I had the most difficult time trying to figure out. And this one, I think I spent years on it. I've tried it started at least 3 or 4 times. And one of the reasons why is because of the way this is tuned. Now, if you watch my previous 5-hour video, it's at the very end, so if you didn't get to it, I don't blame you. I talk about all the sneaky tunings that Allan has used, and in this solo, Allan uses, I think, 4 different types of tuning, so I wanted to show that. But in order to show all those different tunings, like I did if you've seen my 54 Duncan Terrace video where I show the transcriptions that I wrote out while the solo's being played, and you can see how the tuning changes on the fly. I wanted to do that for this tune, but I also have the chords in there. So in order to just show you that, I said, well, I might as well just show you the chords and talk about what took me so long to figure it out. And also, I contacted Steve Hunt, the keyboard player for Allan's band. Now, he didn't play on the recording, but he did play this live with him. It only was played, I think, a handful of times, and there is one recording of it, but it's not great. But I had emailed him if I could use his chart, and he graciously allowed me to, so I'm going to show that there. You know, every chord that I get to, but also where it's a little bit different and what I think it's supposed to be. So you can take that with a grain of salt. At least you'll have Steve's chart. So thank you, Steve, for that. So yeah, what made this song or tune so difficult to figure out is for the chords, the low E and A string are actually an octave lower, and that's because Allan's using the syntax. And with the syntax, we know that you can use any sort of weird tuning with it. So a lot of these chords it's probably easier to think of them as slash chords because there's always a note that's on the E or the A string that's played an octave lower, so the range is a bit wider. But obviously if you're playing it on a real guitar, you're not going to be able to get that. Also, this tune is really a great example of why naming some of these chords are so difficult. So I'll talk about that, but for a majority of the time I'm actually going to use slash chords. And usually I don't like talking about slash chords, but in this instance it's a must because, like I said, we got the low E and A strings down an octave, so we have a very strong fundamental for what the bass is, and then we have an upper structure for that chord higher. So anyway, I'll talk about that in the next part. So let's go through Spokes. So, Steve, like I said, was gracious enough to allow me to use his chart, and this is what it looks like. Now, his chart is a little different because he has the sort of solo chords at the beginning, and then the first chords that you hear are in the second half. So we're going to concentrate on that second half first because that's what the tune leads with. So remember, the low E and A strings are an octave lower, and I also believe in what made this chord section so difficult to figure out is I also believe that only for those head chords, the first ones you hear and when every time they repeat, there's also a patch that plays it an octave higher. So the way that those frequencies interact and also the tone that Allan used for the syntax is really tough to hear the exact voicings. So actually I had to do the solo section chords first and then sort of work my way backwards. So the first chord that we're going to talk about is the weirdest one to name, and I'll also talk about some of these chords in other tunes that we may have seen them in. But this first chord is completely unique to this tune. So Steve has it written out as an F sharp minor 11 with an E flat in the bass. And this is what I got here. So, once again, I can see where Steve sort of got the F sharp minor 11 because we have the 11 here, we have F sharp, and then we have B the 11, and then we have the flat 7 here for the E, but there is no A to really make it a minor, and then we have the E flat here, or D sharp. I think it's probably better to think of this chord as a B sus4 with a D sharp in the bass. If you want to call the D sharp the root, then now we have a really weird name for this chord, and this is why I said naming these chords is going to be so difficult, because I think Allan's really thinking from the lowest note of the chord up. So if I was how I normally do the videos where I talk about the root in different places, it's going to jump all over the place, and I don't think it's going to have the same context. So like, if we're looking at D sharp as our root here, we'd have a minor third, the flat 6, and the flat 9, and that's really awkward to name a chord. So honestly, the best way to name this chord is starting from E. It's like a third inversion E major 7 sus2 chord, but it doesn't sound like that. But then the next chord, this is exactly what I'm talking about, where it gets a little sneaky naming these chords, is that the high E moves down a half step to D sharp, and your low D sharp moves up to E. And then we have this. This is an E major 7 sus2. So, but for a slash chord, you can think of it as a B major with an E in the bass. This chord, I think Allan's playing like this because it makes sense with what comes before it. Like this. And he also used the same chord shape in the, I guess, solo section for Looking Glass. So I have seen him play it before. Another thing I do want to mention is when you're playing this on guitar, it's really difficult because a lot of these chords are up higher and the frets are closer together. Remember, the syntax, all the frets are the same distance apart, so playing some of these chords on the syntax would probably be easier. I think the distance that the frets were uniformly across the neck on the syntax, there's like around the 7th or 8th fret. So obviously the frets are wider apart, makes like playing this chord much easier down here, but when you're up by the 12th fret and 11th fret, it's kind of hard to do. So what you could do is you could just modify this chord. So you, instead of playing the B major up here, you can play it barring with your pinky and then the E in the bass, and we've seen this chord plenty of times. It's like the first chord in Pud 1. So you can play it this way, but I think Allan's actually playing it down here because it makes more sense to me. Like that. But E major 7 sus2 or B major with an E in the bass. So B sus4 with a D sharp in the bass, B major with an E in the bass. Now the next chord moves up to here. So we have this F, E flat, A flat, and then D flat here. Now, once again, traditionally, if we're thinking of like the official chord names, I think the best name for this is a D flat add 9 chord, because we have a D flat major. So we have the 1, the 3, and the 5, and then we have the 9 as the E flat here on the D string. But again, naming this chord's a little weird. It might be easier to think of it as an A flat sus4, whoops, with an F in the bass. Now Steve wrote D flat with an F in the bass, and I think there's actually a 9 there, so I would probably say, so instead of a D flat major with the F in the bass, that E flat is there. So I think it's probably better to write it as maybe D flat sus2 with the F in the bass. And then the next chord, Steve, I think, this is the only chord that I would consider really wrong, is he wrote G minor 7 flat 5. That is the right chord when this part repeats, but here it's actually just a plain old F sharp minor 7. Or you can think of it as an A major with an F sharp in the bass. So you can see that the bass is moving chromatically up while we're having these upper structures on the top of it, B sus4 to B to D flat sus2 and then A major. While we have this chromatic bass line D sharp, E, F, and F sharp. Like that. Those are the first 4 chords. Now the next 3 chords, Steve had written an A major 7 with a C sharp in the bass, and I believe that's correct. And this is the chord that I had difficulty with trying to figure out because of the way that the strings are tuned, and also the other patch being an octave higher. I'm pretty sure it's this A major 7 with the C sharp in the bass, this first inversion A major 7th voicing, which we've seen before, like it's in Tullio. It's the first one that comes to mind. And then the next chord, Steve has is D6 over 9. Now I believe it's just a regular D6 chord. There is no 9 there. So it looks like this. And remember that the 6 chords can also be thought of as minor 7 chords. So you can think of it as a B minor 7 chord. And then that moves up a whole step to E6 or C sharp minor 7. I think we've seen this chord before, but I can't really think off the top of my head. I want to say maybe Home has something, or maybe something similar to this in there. Don't quote me on that though, it could be a little wrong. So that's the first half of that head section. Then once it almost repeats identically again, but now the chords are slightly different, because now instead of this chromatic bass line that we have, it's now moving up in a more diatonic way, like in D flat major. So the first chord Steve has, I would agree with, is a C sharp, or I think it maybe D flat or C sharp minor 9. So we almost have that B sus4 kind of sound before, but now we have the 9 in there. So we have the root, we have the 9, we have the flat 7, and then we have the minor 3rd on top. So C sharp minor 9. Once again, I don't think you'd really call this a slash chord. Then the next chord is a B major, like before, but now instead of E being in the bass, it's now D sharp in the bass. So this is just a regular B major chord. Now, earlier, before, in my head, every time I hear that the opening first 2 chords, I hear this. And then, like this. This is another way we play a major 7 sus2. We'll see this chord also later. But when this chord comes back with the D sharp in the bass, I think this is just a little too much to reach. So I don't think Allan's playing it like this. So I really think it makes more sense to play it with the B major up here, and then the D sharp in the bass, this sort of inversion, instead of playing it like this inversion. So C sharp minor 7, B major with the D sharp in the bass. Now the same chord as before, how I said Steve wrote a D flat with the F in the bass, I'd say D sus2 with the F in the bass. And then, like I said, instead of going to F sharp minor 7, it now goes to G minor 7 flat 5, or a B minor with a G in the bass. Now, again, if you're playing this on the syntax, you can reach this chord up here, but on my guitar, it's really a pain in the butt to kind of play that. All my fingers are all crushed together. So I would suggest, this is probably how Allan's playing it, moving this down a group of strings, so we have this here. So once again, we have that, I'm sorry, it's a B flat minor with the G in the bass. How did I get that wrong? So once again, slash chords help out a lot here, because they're easier to see how the chords are moving. So that second section, C sharp minor 9 to B major with the D sharp in the bass, to a D sus2 with an F in the bass, and then a B flat minor with a G in the bass, or G minor 7 flat 5. Then the next 3 chords are exactly the same, the A major 7 with the C sharp in the bass, and then D6, and then E6. Now here, in just the intro, the reason why I came up with this particular voicing and not like these that we've seen before, like in There's a Mark, these kind of chords, is that you hear a very high D sharp in there. And your first finger's right there. So I think it's probably this voicing. So after the second time of this E6 chord, you can play the D sharp on the top of the major 7. Now the last 3 chords that we have, Steve wrote D7, it might be hard to see for some of these, D7 with a 13 underneath. And I think he's just talking about what the extensions are. So it's like it's a D dominant 7 with a 13, which would be something like this. But I hear the 9 on top. I don't know if that's part of the melody or it's actually being played in the chord, so I would just call this a straight D13 chord, but I'm playing it like this. You can see you've got the B sus4 triad on the top, and now we have a C and a D in the bass here. So D13. And then it goes to a B flat with a F sharp or G flat in the bass, which you can think of as a G flat or F sharp major 7 sharp 5 chord. And then that goes to once again, it makes sense as a B flat with the F sharp and the bass, another slash chord, and then E flat major 13. As Steve wrote E major 7 with the 13, and again we have our E major 7 here, and we're adding the 13 on the top. Again, you could think of this as a G sus4 with E flat in the bass, or you can even think of it as a C sus2 with an E flat in the bass. For those last two chords, instead of playing them on the E string, this, it might be easier to move them down to the A string. Once again, since the E and the A string are an octave lower, they're both viably, that they could be played there. But it might make a little bit more sense because after that D13, we have the F sharp major 7 sharp 5 chord, or again you can think of it as a B flat major with the F sharp in the bass, and then your E flat major 13 chord, or again you can think of it as you can see it's got that same sus4 voicing like the B over here. Now it's G sus4 with the E flat in the bass. So yeah, there are multiple different ways of playing it. I'll just play it real quickly so you can hear how it sounds all together. Great, but it gets the point across. So that's kind of my interpretation of what it is. Again, with any of these chords, if you hear something differently or think of something differently, please let me know. Like, there's no live footage or anything, but this is, after years of dissecting it, the best that I can do. Alright, so then after that, it goes into the next section where Allan starts to solo, which is sort of a majority of what the tune is. So, let's talk about that now. So this part's a little bit easier for me to hear because we don't have that patch that's an octave higher. It's just the straight synth sound that Allan's using. But again, the E and the A string are an octave lower. And here with Steve's chart, I agree with most of it actually, or at least what I hear. His is a little bit easier. Might have just been like, you know, just writing it out for shorthand. And nothing that he wrote in this part is really wrong. It would just change the tonality a little bit of the chord, but it's just adding extensions. So anyway, the first part is this B flat major 7E kind of sound that Jimmy Johnson's playing, which makes sense because the first chord of the solo section is this C minor 9 voicing. Now we've seen this, I believe, in Home. I think this is also using even though I didn't do a video on it, Gaslamp Blues. Allan uses this minor 9 voicing. It's a little interesting because now we have the minor second right in the first two notes. And what really helped out here to really crack what the voicings for this solo section is that Steve wrote out the notes here. So he wrote C, D, B flat, and E flat. So I knew that those were the notes in order. I just had to find the right way to put it. And obviously if this C note is an octave lower, I was thinking, well, maybe it's over here, then you have the D, and it makes it so much harder. If you think of it as the low E and the A strings down an octave higher, octave lower, sorry, then this chord makes much more sense. So actually what I did was I followed the bass note of whatever the lowest note was, and then try to fit all the rest of the chords there, and that's how I came up with this. So, we've got the C minor 9, once again diatonic to the B flat major 7E kind of part that he's doing, so this would be like C Dorian. And then that moves down to B minor 9, which also Steve wrote out. Now the next chord, he wrote out F sharp minor 9, which would mean if you take that voicing and then move it to F sharp. But the lowest note is actually C sharp. So I think when Allan probably had shown him how this was played either on the syntax or whatever, and Steve just wrote out what he saw, because it's the same fret that your middle finger is going to be on. This is the 9th fret. It's just now moved down to the E string. But now doing that, we're adding a C sharp, changes the context of that chord. So this would be like an A major 7 voicing in first inversion, because we have an A, we have an E, a G sharp, and a C sharp. So A major 7. This chord is also in House of Mirrors. Then after that, we get to this A major 7 sharp 5 chord, which we've seen obviously in tons. We saw it earlier in plenty of tunes. Again, you can think of it as a D flat or C sharp with an A in the bass. So C minor 9. B minor 9, A major 7, A major 7, sharp 5. Now this is the part where it's a little off, and this type of section repeats a couple of times, or like 3 times, maybe 4 times in this section. So each time it's almost identical except for the very, very last one. But what Steve wrote was a G flat with an A in the bass, A flat in the bass. Whoops. Which is this. Which is what I agree is the first chord. But then, or once again, you could think of this as an A flat 9 sus 4. We've seen this voicing Allan use plenty of times in correlation to what the next chord is. Now, in Steve's chart, he has this moving up, just this voicing. So G flat with an A flat in the bass to A flat with a B flat in the bass to A with a B in the bass and a B with a C sharp in the bass. Like that. But what I hear is more to what Allan usually does. When he plays his voicing, he likes to usually play this and then move his first finger out a lot. So if you're thinking of this as a C sharp as the bass, we'd have like a C sharp. He's probably thinking of it as a minor 11 because we have the minor 3rd here, and now here it's the 11. Allan does this, but he reverses it. So he plays the 9 sus 4 first, and then takes the bottom 3 notes and then moves them up a whole step. So now we have a B flat minor 9. So once again, you can think of it as A flat 9 sus 4 or G flat with an A flat in the bass, and then moving that up to a B flat minor 9. That then modulates up a whole step, a minor 3rd. So now we have A major with a B in the bass, or B 9 sus 4, and then C sharp minor 9. Like that. So every time we see that part, I'm going to shorthand it because I believe that's really what's going on there. Steve's has the same voicing for every chord there. Then after that it goes to A minor 9, same voicing we saw earlier. Then it moves down to A flat minor 9, just like before, just modulated down a minor 3rd. Now here's what's interesting, because the second time this solo repeats, this chord is a little bit different, and I'll explain it when I'm finished here. So A flat minor 9. Then it goes to D major with the G in the bass, or G major 7 sus 2. We've seen this chord plenty of times, like I said, like in Put 1. Then the next chord, Steve wrote G major 7 with the B in the bass, which again, maybe it's something like this. Could be this, but I hear the A in there. So I think again it's really a G sus 2 with the B in the bass. Or again a D sus 2 with the B in the bass. Because the voicings, they're the same sort of name on the inversions. So the G major 7 sus 2, then a quick G add 9, and then we've got that voicing that I was telling you about from before, the section. So B flat with the C in the bass, or C 9 sus 4 to D minor 9, to E flat 9 sus 4 to F minor 9. So altogether we've got this. Just playing it quickly to get through it. Now here, it changes the format a little bit. We have another major 7 sus 2 chord, but this is a B flat major with an E flat in the bass. Like I said, we've seen this chord before in Panic Station. That's why I said this is what I hear earlier in the head. But because when it repeats again, it's a little bit different, I thought, it can't be this because this is it's a little too awkward to play. I've never seen Allan play that voicing. But here, I believe that's actually what he's doing. He's playing the voicing like this from Panic Station. This B flat with an E flat in the bass. Again, E flat major 7 sus 2. Then after this chord, you get a quick C minor 9 and then a B minor 9 from before. Like that. Then the next part, once again, more major 7 sus 2 chords. We have a B major 7 sus 2, or F sharp major with a B in the bass. Now, when Steve wrote this, he wrote a F major with a D flat in the bass, which is the next chord, major 7 sharp 5, but the root here, or the bass note, is really playing a B flat. So it's the same chord, just moved down a half step. So B major 7 sus2 to B flat major 7 sus2, or F sharp major with the B in the bass to F major with the B in the B flat in the bass. Then they become the major 7 sharp 5 chords. C major 7 sharp 5, or E major with the C in the bass, and that moves down a minor third to A major 7 sharp 5, or C sharp major with the A in the bass. And then from here we have that same motif again. Like I said, now it's a A major with a B in the bass to a C sharp minor 9, then a D9 sus4, or C major with a D in the bass. Here's where it's different. Instead of moving up a whole step like we saw before, it moves up a minor third. Allan just always is playing around with these modulations, as you know now, so it's always tricky, to F minor 9. Then it repeats back to the main head section. So those are all the chords. It repeats identically again, except for one chord is a little bit different. I'm going to play through it and then I'll talk about how it's different later. Alright, I'm going to just play through it quickly because usually these chords are held out for a very long time. The head chords that we just played, repeat exactly the same again. Then the solo section again. Once again, we get the I don't know, 16 bars of free B flat major 7 kind of improv. The only difference is that, like I said, that A flat minor 9 chord, when it repeats, this time has an E in the bass. So what's actually being played here is after this chord, I believe it's actually like this voicing. You could actually play that minor 9 voicing an octave higher because your pinky would be on the 24th fret. But the thing is that this G sharp is not an octave lower, so I think it's actually played like this. And this is the same voicing. It's really the A flat minor 9 or G sharp minor 9 with an E in the bass, and you can hear that E is super low because now the range of this chord is so wide. We've got this an octave lower, and then we've got this note on the top. So if you consider E your root, then you would have E, I think a E with an add 9 and an add sharp 11. Yeah, because we have no G sharp, so no major 7th. Or you could think of it as a G sharp minor 9 with the E in the bass. That's it. Then the chords repeat the same way. Even at the very end, the chords are identical, except the last chord is this one again. So at the very, very, very end of the solo, or the two, we have the D13 to the F sharp major 7 sharp 11. I'm sorry, F sharp major 7 sharp 5. It's got alphabet soup in my mouth. And then the last chord is what we just saw, the E add 9 add sharp 11, or the G sharp with the G sharp minor 9 with the E in the bass. So it seems like it's a lot of chords, but they follow a lot of the same motifs, and a lot of the chords are just reused again and just moved in a different way. But again, both sections have the E and the A string an octave lower. So those are all the chords and how I think they go. Now I want to talk about the solo section. If you got through my 5.5-hour video, the very end I talk about all the different tunings. Now, the reason why I had to put that at the very end is because I sort of had to build up a little bit of good faith to show you all these different patterns and how they work in all these different solos. and then show how those patterns appear in these weirder tunings. So obviously, if the pattern is the same in regular standard, it's the same with the every other string an octave higher, whatever. And it was this tune that I mentioned Joe Britton helped figure out, and pretty much we would go back and forth with this tune a lot, and I would send him what I thought of what was going on. So Joe had his own, he was transcribing his own version of this, and I had wished he finished. I guess he just got disinterested, because he's the best in my opinion. He's the one that discovered all these weird tunings, and it was from this opening lick where he figured out every other string was an octave higher, but it's every other string while the guitar is tuned in fourths, or the syntax is tuned in fourths. So instead of E, A, D, G, B, E, the top two strings are a half step up to C and F, so now every string is a fourth apart. And then the A, I think it's the A, the G, and the F string are also an octave higher. So also what's interesting is when you play in fourths tuning, it's like fifths tuning reversed. So we have, the fifth, it would be on the top, so we have F, C, G, and whatever. So this solo has 4 different tunings. It has fourths tuning with every other string an octave higher. It has regular standard tuning. It has fifths tuning. So like I said, Allan tunes in fifths, starting from the high E down, so the high E is always the same pitch. It's E, A, D, G, C, F, which, like I said, is like fourths tuning backwards. And also, it's like if you know how to play, your regular scales, you just have to think of them upside down. So, like if you played C major, you'd be C, D, E, and then F is over here, F, G, A, and then I think this would be B. So if you think of your scales upside down, you can actually play in fifths tuning. So those are the 3, and then the last one is the really sneaky one that Joe found out, what he called, and what I stole it from him, is reverse tuning, where you still have the guitar tuned E, A, D, G, B, E, but now instead of the high string being up here and the low string being up here, the low string is the highest pitched string, and the bottom string is the lowest pitched one. So with that tuning, you still have all of your notes in the same spot. It's just the octave that they're in is so weird, and that's why I said with all these like different sort of sneaky tunings, you don't have to almost relearn the guitar again. If you know how to play the scales upside down, you can kind of play fifths tuning. Allan played the violin, so he already knew how fifths tuning was, and even if you do fifths tuning, the top 4 strings would be like how a violin is tuned. Fourths tuning, which is just the normal guitar with those 2 strings higher, which is really awkward, but he experimented with them. And I think for the most part, when he uses that fourths tuning with every string an octave higher in this solo, he's not playing through any changes. It's just the free part, which is just B flat major. And again, like I said in that video, you have these long sections where you can basically do anything, and that's what he does here. And over this A major 7 sharp 5 chord, and what's really interesting is that every time this chord comes in, it seems like Allan treats it as the A whole tone scale, which is a little unusual because there's a G sharp in this chord, and in the whole tone scale we have a G. So once again, I don't know how Allan's thinking or approaching it, and it sounds cool, but when you apply that to fourths tuning, you get you'll see there's a lot of string skipping, symmetrical stuff, because you don't have to worry about everything's tuned the same way. So it makes sense to use that fourths tuning for anything that's symmetrical like that. But everything else usually follows some sort of logic or guitar pattern that we're familiar with. So now that you know the chords, now you can see how this solo applies to them, and also what I think Allan's treating the chord as. So that's it for Spokes. I spent a lot of time with this in the past, so hopefully I got it right and you guys enjoy it. So thank you so much for watching, and also any new subscribers that I forgot to mention. I won't be doing many Allan tunes because I've probably done them already, so if you're interested, go to the channel and check out all the different videos I did, because I probably did, and if I didn't do it, there's a good reason why. Alright, here's the transcription. Thank you.